but then there's other times, and it does kind of follow the calendar year. We set strategic priorities usually in the Q4. And then, so, all of Q3, you are focused really on identifying what the strategic priorities are for the business in the following year. So it changes quite a bit. The product manager role is, it really is it's an interesting dynamic role that allows you to, constantly be on your toes and interact cross-functionally with different parts of the business.
Can you describe some of the projects you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. So the role that I just moved into with Thermo Fisher, I'm on the cell culture, cell therapy business unit. In particular, we're in the bioproduction division of Thermo Fisher. And so we are working on development of different media types. So cell culture media, it comes in a number of different formats, as many on the call know. Liquid is probably the most common with what you work with today. But for large scale manufacturing, there's two different formats that come in powder form. There's what we just call a dry powder media, and then a proprietary media to Thermo, which is called advanced granulation technology, which helps, it's around ease of use of preparing that media. It auto pHs, it dissolves faster, dust free, etc. So one particular project in PD, new product development project that I am working on is developing a fourth format. And I can't go into too much detail here, but we're looking to improve upon some of the characteristics of that advanced granulation technology cell culture media format to just make it easier to use, easier to ship, easier to store for our clients, such that it reduces their time associated with the use of it and some of the costs that are associated with it as well.
So earlier you had mentioned that you started to realize you didn't want to go into a research track while doing your PhD. What pushed you to do a postdoc then?
Yeah, no, very, very good question. To put it frankly, limited options. So, I know one of your questions in this series of in this interview here is around lessons learned and things that you wish you would have known earlier during the PhD. I found out probably my fourth, maybe leaked into my fifth year, that there aren't recruiters, there aren't companies lined up knocking on your door, as soon as you receive that PhD. So when I realized after applying to pharmaceutical companies for the better part of a year that I just wasn't receiving the feedback and the interviews appropriate to be able to move into those type of positions, a postdoc was the logical next step. I do have passion for research, and I was looking to further my career down that path, but I knew that an academic professor was not my ultimate goal. So I accepted a postdoc out at UC Davis. It was it was a very interesting research that we were doing on prostate cancer, but again I knew that bench work was not going to be satisfying to me, throughout the duration of my career.
So I know it hasn't been a while since you graduated, but like with our increased use and adaptation of LinkedIn, do you think that has changed anything with terms of recruiters specifically coming to just graduated PhDs, or do you think you still need more experience in another set of experiences to be sought out?
Yeah, I mean, I do often interact with a lot of my lab mates who are still in academia and are considering to move into more of an industrial space. I would say that there are labs out there that collaborate much more frequently with biopharma than others. It really depends on what you're working with and who your principal investigator is. I don't know, it's been 7 years. I would say that from the conversations that I've had, a lot is the same. That, you need that industrial experience before, you're a sought after talent. And that's difficult, right? It's the chicken and the egg where you have to have the experience to be able to get into the industry that you want to get into. I do see former lab mates that have taken, probably a lesser position earlier, and that they have worked their way up in a company in that way. But collaborations during your PhD and any time, and also networking is certainly important. When you are at conferences, definitely advocate for, going up to the booths, attending the talks, making yourself very visible, such that you do build up your network and are able to, get into industry if that's the particular path that you're interested in. I will say that's exactly what I did to get the interview with Beckman Coulter. There was a very small gathering, little workshop, and a tenured sales guy with Beckman was putting that on at UC Davis, and I created a rapport with that individual, asked him to forward my CV to the hiring manager of a particular posting that I saw online, and I think that really helped. So there's tactics that you can take to get your foot in the door, but by my understanding, and again, it's been 7 years, but it's tough when if you're just relying on submitting applications via a online submission portal. There's computer algorithms that are going to spit you out, and discard that application pretty quickly unless you do have some type of relationship there.
So what's the composition of your team? Do you have a lot of PhDs that are working closely with you?
Yeah, it depends. So in the R&D space, a lot of PhDs, right? With the new company, with Thermo, we've got a very large R&D team that's not only focused on new product development, but that's also kind of in our services arm that are looking to work directly with the customer. And the majority of them have PhDs. That is another alternate, path where, you're working for a lab solution provider like Thermo or like Beckman Coulter. And, to have really intelligent conversations with the customer, and to be able to, act on those conversations, a strong technical background like a PhD is necessary. Now, there's other parts, there's other functions within the company like marketing that you won't see PhDs typically. The product managers, I would say it's typically a 50-50 split. Most companies will think about product management as either depth of knowledge or breadth of knowledge. And, the depth of knowledge would be the PhDs. They would really understand the ins and outs of the particular technology that, that portfolio that they're carrying. But then there's also the breadth of product manager, who is much more, he or she is better at, working cross-functionally, is probably has more skills in terms of salesmanship, et cetera. So that's probably a 50-50 split in terms of global product managers.
And what are some major characteristics of your team? And what are some major skills that they need to have to thrive?
Yeah, again, I would say it depends on whether you're going to be a technical subject matter expert or other. Either way, you do need to be able to, communicate, to be able to lead very complex calls and conversations. You have to be able to take inputs from everybody in the business, and I am responsible for the profits and losses of my particular portfolio, and I get evaluated on that. So you have to make, the right decisions for the business. So those characteristics are, that you fully understand what's best for the business, that you're able, that you do have some type of business background, and I didn't going into this type of role. I really learned on the job, but I feel that some of the personality traits that I do possess, liken to myself to more of a commercial and a business type of role. So yeah, it's again, product management, dynamic position, and you just those characteristics that you possess are that you're able to work cross-functionally, and that you're able to partner closely with different teams.
So other than just the kind of breadth of experience and the career maturity, I guess, are there any concrete skills that your postdoc instilled in you that have been beneficial in your current role?
I would say you definitely have to be able to, present, and during my PhD, during my postdoc, just giving those educational seminars, giving your dissertation thesis, going to conferences, etc. That those would be the public speaking, concrete skills that are necessary for this type of role. Not only do I travel, in this role you do travel quite a bit globally, and my travel is not only for that voice of customer that I was talking about before, for new product development, but it's also for giving the technical seminars at key stakeholder meetings within a customer site, or at a large conference when you're either launching a product or you are, just talking about the capabilities of the business. So public speaking is certainly necessary for a product manager.
In addition to these, and you had mentioned a couple of workshops and like conference attendance, what are other experiences that have particularly prepared you?
So yeah, I mean, I know Katina knows my PhD advisor quite well, and being PhD gives you a number of transferable skills that companies look at, and outside of just the basic research, understanding, the science behind, what you're working on, you also need to be able to deal with rejection, right? So you're submitting papers. I was lucky enough to have, 9 or 10 different publications when I graduated, but I dealt with a lot of rejection when I was putting these, manuscripts together. And it's not only rejection, in the peer review process, but there's just the ins and outs of working with your PhD advisor and meeting the expectations required out of him or her. So you have to have a little bit of thick skin to be a PhD. And I'd say those experiences that I had with my PhD advisor, they made me stronger. The experiences that I had, when I was submitting manuscripts and you get a laundry list of corrections needed to resubmit, or, just the rejection letter outright, that has helped me to be able to, better deal with the business world.
What was your biggest obstacle moving into either the Beckman-Coulter role or Thermo Fisher?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say just the business side of things. So I was, as many on the call, you're a bench scientist, and I had never, I think I did take maybe Econ 101 at UK when I was in undergrad, but that was probably the extent of my business knowledge. And so it was a learning curve just to be able to understand the financials, the accounting, the different ways that we would look at a business, because I didn't have any background in that. I was able, Beckman sponsored me to complete what was called a Harvard Business Credential of Readiness program. So it's kind of a very fast-paced, very much a miniature MBA course, where it gives you a crash course on all things, from econ to accounting, so on and so forth. So, that was that first, year or so that I was a product manager and not having that background, I struggled. I certainly struggled with understanding how to look at the business financially. But, I think in us PhDs in, the STEM sciences, majority of us have good understanding of math and, are able to quickly pick up on that. So, it was a learning curve. certainly, but it's not a gap that was overly burdensome that limited career growth at all.
If you could go back, would you do an MBA?
Well, I mean, even today, right, that's a possibility. And something that a lot of people consider. There's a number of PhD MBAs that I interact with. And it crosses my mind whether or not I feel career limited by not having an official MBA. But I do think that in my opinion, experience and demonstrated value is worth so much more than a piece of paper that would certify your credentials, I guess. I'm still somewhat relatively young, so it may come up at some point. I've got 2 daughters, and another one on the way. At this point, I'm not considering an MBA, but who knows? In the future, if some of my time frees up and I do feel career limited without having it, then I would consider doing probably a online MBA.
So speaking of your daughters, and congrats on the 3rd one.
Thank you.
How would you describe your work-life balance?
It's really good. It really is. So I am a remote employee, and not this is not only because of COVID-19, but I've been a remote employee for about 2 years now, dating back to when I was still with Paul Corporation. And you have a lot of flexibility. You really do. You need to be on call from, say 8 to 5, 9 to 5. But there's plenty of downtime throughout the day when, you may not have meetings that, especially given these times, I'm able to interact with my daughters who are, out of daycare right now. So that's great. Now, remember, I'm a global product manager, so I do have to interact with the rest of the globe, and that with the different time zones, that does mean that I'm taking a call at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night to be able to have interaction with the China team, for example. Or earlier than that to be able to interact with India. So there's a global time zone that you do have to understand. It also comes with travel, and not now, given COVID, but I would say that I travel between 25 and 30% of the time. So, 1 week out of the month, I'm on the road. And that's a little difficult with the family life, but you get used to it. You actually start to embrace it, to be able to get away to a degree. So, a lot of flexibility in the, in a product manager role. It of course depends on your supervisor, on your boss. I've had 1 or 2 micromanagers, in the past where, if you're not online at all times between 8 and 5, you kind of, they nitpick at you. But I think most people nowadays are embracing the flexibility of work schedules. They understand the value associated with allowing their employees to have some downtime, to have breaks, and that's a trend that I'm excited to see. Also, companies are now embracing the remote employee much more than they did in the past. I will say, you know, being based in Cincinnati, I'm actually I'm in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is just across the border from Cincinnati. But being in the geography that I'm located in, there's not a whole lot of, you know, life science in this area. So the fact that there are trends towards, you know, remote employees, and I'm you know, blessed to be able to be a remote employee now, it helps me, my confidence in being able to remain in Cincinnati with my family and the rest of my immediate family, my parents and my wife's parents, et cetera, is great, right?
How does this balance compare to when you were a postdoc?
Yeah, it's quite a bit different, right? During the PhD and postdoc, you're conducting your experiments, but at the same time, you're either, you know, taking classes or writing manuscripts, et cetera. So, you know, I would say I was putting in 60 to 80 hours a week, depending on what was going on during PhD postdoc. I'm putting in significantly less than that now. I would say anywhere between 35 to 45 hours a week. So, you know, you're definitely, the total number of work hours is reduced. You know, I would say there's more flexibility as well now.
I would imagine it's also helpful to just be able to turn off.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us can't do right now.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So you had touched up on this earlier, but what else is something you wish someone had told you prior to graduating?
Yeah, definitely that, like I said, it's going to be tougher to get that first job. You know, but on the positive side, you know, of that, the PhD is so valued. There's two people that I work with right now that do not have PhDs, and they have significantly more experience than I do, you know, 3 and 4 times more years in a product manager role, but I'm actually at a higher band level than they are. So, you know, I would say that although it's difficult to, you know, I did put a little bit of a negative light there and apologize for that, but it is, you know, it is a little difficult to get that first role, but because of the transferable skills that you possess, as well as the credentials that you have, you know, the PhD is certainly valuable. Me walking into a conversation with a customer and handing them a business card that has those 3 precious letters behind, you know, my name, it instantly gives you credibility, and that's what companies are after. So, you know, yes, there's some trials and tribulations in the PhD route, but I think your career growth is a lot higher with that PhD. And had I known that earlier, you know, I guess in year 4 and 5, I would have been less, you know, I would have been less disjointed, less scared about my future because I was struggling to obtain that first role.
How do you think then that first job, and really how has a market shifted with COVID, and what have you seen in your particular field with these shifts?
So for us, business is booming. It's I'd say we're getting much more interaction with our customers than we did in the past. The revenue numbers, they're, I would say a little flat as to, where, as we look at it with the number of engagements. So customers are perhaps, putting off some of those purchases, but the number, like I said, the number of engagements that we do have right now, because our customers are, not necessarily in their lab settings, have increased tremendously. So that's one, change that I've seen. We have a commercial team that in the past they would travel 4 hours to go see a customer and then 4 hours back. And that was the entirety of their day for a single half an hour meeting. Now you see, people are embracing technology, and I think that we're getting more done. That's another change. We are working with, I believe, around 15 different companies that are going after the COVID vaccine, and being upstream on that process, being a provider of cell culture media, we have made strategic decisions as a business to prioritize the delivery and manufacturing, feasibility, manufacturing and delivery of these media to, these COVID companies, for, the social and economic reasons behind that. So, that's another thing now that we have, really a prioritization process that has been established as to, who we are going to partner with more closely and give, more of a white glove treatment to. That's been a change. There's also protocols that have been established on the manufacturing and the labs that I think will continue for, a number of years in terms of how we conduct our experiments and how we manufacture our powders. Social distancing and different processes that have been established to minimize contact, which I think will get pushed forward in the future.
What has your mentor-mentee relationships look like, and how have they evolved?
Yeah. So, well, if we go all the way back, to the PhD, I would say that my advisor and I, we had a very close relationship. He was hard to work with at times, but that relationship, has evolved. He even reaches out to me today for certain questions and some help, and especially when I was with Beckman, he would reach out quite occasionally for a number of different things. So it's become more of a peer relationship now, a friendship, than it was a grad student PI relationship in the past. Other mentors that I've had in my time at Beckman, Paul, and now Thermo, they've also evolved. I'm not in constant contact with my former supervisors. I'd say I'm much more in contact with my peers at my former companies than the mentors. My current supervisor, we've only met face to face one time during the interview, just given COVID. But I can tell that it's going to be a really good relationship between us. He's very laid back, and he gives a lot of freedom to operate, which I appreciate.
What's the best way do you think to foster these relationships, and what are some things that we can do as mentees to ensure a successful relationship?
Yeah, I mean, being open with that individual, with your mentor, I think is important. As relationships evolve, you certainly are able to be more open, and that trust increases. But you have to be able to provide that trust, right? So it goes both ways, in that you have to be able to get your work done, and be successful in what you're working on in order to gain that trust from a mentor. And I've seen that. I've had probably 10 or so odd supervisors since I've gotten out of academia, and every relationship is a little bit different. But again, just trust being two ways. You definitely have to gain that trust by being diligent in what you're working on. Yeah.
Well, with that, I will open up to questions from the audience if they have anything they'd like to ask. You guys can use the chat box or just unmute yourselves. Do you have a question that I should be asking and I am not asking?
I don't know. I don't think so. We talked about a lot here. There is significant differences between what I do and maybe the other participants in this virtual coffee, right? So definitely an alternative path to the traditional PhD route. I don't get involved in the day-to-day science like I used to, but those interactions and the passion that I have still, for the advancement of science is still there. So I don't know if there's any questions about how I interact with biopharma, or, I do know, just because of my interactions with that group, how a lot of that is structured, and the different levels in pharma, and who does what, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if there's any questions related to that, I'm happy to help.
Well, this is kind of everything I had. You were fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was fun. Thank you, Rupinder. Thanks for putting it together, and for reaching out.
Thank you for making your time available and being so receptive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does Katina have something to say?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. It was good to see you, and glad to hear everything's going well, and you got to end up in Kentucky with your dream job. That's amazing.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. No, it's been a wild ride out to California, then to Indianapolis for 5 years or so. But the past couple of years being back in my hometown, you know, has been awesome. Just get closer to family and get closer to friends.
That's good. I can't believe you've been gone 7 years. Oh my gosh. Where does the time go?
It's been a while. You still look the same though, Katina.
Thank
Can I
you.
also
Bye-bye.
Chad, can I also ask you for your CV and if you're okay with sharing that with the graduate students,
Yeah.
just so we kind of know what a CV for your position looks like?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just, I helped somebody out just recently with a recommendation letter and I had to update it. So it should be relatively fresh and I'm happy to send it off.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, thanks for putting it together, Rupinder. And if there's any other questions that come, you know, out of this, I'm happy to follow up.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good one.
All right. Yeah, you too. Take care, everyone.